I immediately thought of you Sunday night, sitting there enthralled by this documentary series about New York City. And it was just like I said, I heard that voice, the camera's not on him, and I heard a little bit more. And then there he was, and I was just stunned. It's completely clear. Those are sentences. It's a paragraph. Everything's true. It's a serious point about how you actually build on this island and why you're able to build so high on this island. And then I'm hearing him talk about people are buying faucets that water doesn't come out of. What happened? What happened from the guy who said that and was able to say that in 1999 about construction and now doesn't know how faucets work?
Well, Lawrence, I think a couple of things are going on, and one is perhaps the most obvious. This is a person who has untreated psychiatric disorders, and any untreated disorder of any kind worsens over time, as long as it remains untreated. So it makes perfect sense that somebody who is unhealthy as he is, who is under the extraordinary amount of stress he's under, would have a harder time holding it together cognitively. The other thing that I think is interesting, before I get to the second point, is that Donald was always quite good when he was younger at sticking to a point, and he knew certain things about his business, so he could say perfectly reasonable statements like that with confidence. And let's be fair, he was very good at being in the media, and that's one of the main reasons my grandfather chose him to be his successor, because he had that kind of presence. So the second point, though, that it struck me in watching that is that his target audience has changed dramatically in the ensuing decades. He used to be focused on becoming a part of New York City's upper crust inner circle. He desperately wanted to be part of that milieu. He desperately wanted to be accepted by his betters, which is how he perceived them. And now he appeals to an audience that appreciates the kind of anecdotes about showers that don't produce water, and that is full of the kind of invective and hatred that he has now become expert at. So I think those two things kind of track together.
I was struck by what you've written about where he is in relation to the edge as a result of New York State Attorney General Letitia James closing in on him. And that specific line she said in that television interview about she looks at 40 Wall Street every day. Is it your sense that Attorney General James has figured out two things: how to beat Donald Trump in court and how to drive him absolutely insane with statements like that?
Yeah, she has his number for sure. And anybody who's from New York who has been paying any attention for the last many decades knows what makes him tick. And what's so fascinating about this latest chapter in his life is that he's finally reached the end of the road. When he was taking over for my grandfather, or when he was my grandfather's successor and the one who was going to fill my grandfather's ambitions, he didn't need skill. He just needed skill as a real estate developer. He just needed the skill as the arrogant, self-confident, brash guy who played well on television. My grandfather always had hundreds of millions of dollars to prop him up. We know that after my grandfather died, Donald sold the empire lock, stock, and barrel at a loss of approximately $300 million. So he still had some cash on hand to keep it going, and then he kept getting rehabilitated and rehabilitated. A.G. James knows better than anybody else that there's nobody else left to hand Donald a blank check anymore. And that's what keeps him up at night, because he is terrified of having the truth about him be known, not just to other people, but to himself, because that's what's kept him going all these times, all these years. the lie that has become in his own mind the truth about what a great, successful man he is.
So his criminal trial in Manhattan starts Monday, March 25th with jury selection. I get the sense from him from my distance that he is more disturbed at civil judgments that force him to pay money than he is at being criminally indicted where there isn't necessarily any sort of fine involved.
You're absolutely right, and there are two reasons for this. The most obvious one is that money in my family was always the only currency. It stood in for everything else. The more you have, the more you're worth. As long as you have more than other people, you're worth more in every sense of what that word means. And the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is that he no longer cares about the criminal trials because, one, they won't necessarily cost him money, but two, they increase his street cred with his base and with the Republican Party, which is a very devastating commentary on where we are as a country.
So as you go forward this year, when we're looking at what is bringing him to the edge, we should keep our eyes more on the civil cases and how is he coming up with the money and how is he getting through that than what's going to happen to him in the criminal trials.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case, Lawrence.
Mary Trump, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Always glad to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.